On the absolute edge of the world, where the maps grew thin and the sea was a chaos of gray and white, there was an island. It was too small to be called an island. It was a tooth of stone, a final full stop at the end of a sentence. On this tooth of stone, there was nothing but the taste of salt, the scream of gulls, and a tall, lonely lighthouse. Its white paint was peeling, revealing the gray stone beneath, like a bone showing through skin. It stood against the endless wind, a monument to a forgotten purpose. But the lighthouse was dark. Its grate, guiding eye had been closed for 10 long years. Its beam, once a sword that cut through the night, had vanished. Inside this stone tower lived a man named Silas. Silas was the lighthouse keeper, but he kept nothing. He was a shepherd who had lost his flock and then lost himself. He was a man who had misplaced his own soul. Long ago, a storm just like this one, full of rage and thunder, had come in the night. His wife, Alara, had been on a ship returning from the mainland. Silas was in this very lighthouse and the light was on. He kept it polished. He kept it turning. But the storm was stronger. The sea, the very thing he was meant to guard others against, had reached up and taken his wife's ship. The light had shone on the wreckage. From that night on, his grief was a physical thing. It was a cold fog that filled the lighthouse, heavier than the sea fog outside. And so, in his bottomless sadness, Silas let the great light go out. Why? He would mutter to the wind that rattled his windows. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. Why light the way for others, when my own path is black? The sea gives nothing. It only takes. His routine was one of empty repetition. He would wake, stare at the wall, eat a piece of stale bread, stare at the sea. He would listen to the waves crash, hearing his wife's name in the spray. He would sleep. The boats from the nearby village learned to fear this stretch of water. They gave Silas's rock a new name. They called it the Dark Island, or the Keeper's Tomb. Silas's heart had become a mirror of his home. It was as hard as the rock, as cold as the sea, and as empty as the unlit lamp. One morning, after a particularly violent storm had raged for 3 days, Silas walked on the small patch of wet rock that encircled his lighthouse. The sea was calm now, exhausted. The storm had littered his tiny island with the sea's garbage. Splintered wood from broken crates. Thick tangles of fishing nets, lost long ago. Green and brown bottles empty. And a small, dark wooden box. Silas grunted. More trash for the tide to take away again. He nudged it with his boot, expecting it to be empty and light. It was heavier than it looked. He kicked it. The wood held firm. With a deep sigh, a sound of profound boredom, he bent his old knees and picked it up. His fingers, stiff with cold, fumbled with the simple metal clasp. He opened it. He expected nothing. Lost coins. A sailor's rusty tools. But inside, it was not empty. It was just a jar. A simple, empty glass jar. But it was perfect. The storm had smashed ships, but it had not broken this. It felt different. It was the first beautiful thing Silas had held in a decade. Tucked inside the jar, he saw a small, rolled-up piece of parchment. Silas pulled out the tiny scroll. His old eyes, blurry from staring at nothing, struggled to read the elegant, faded ink. The note said only 5 words. "Give me your light. I will keep it safe." "Light?" Silas said out loud. What a cruel joke. He thought it was a message from a child lost at sea. A pointless prayer. He crushed the paper in his fist and, with a bitter grunt, threw it into the sea. The waves took it instantly. But he kept the jar. He did not know why. It was useless. It held nothing. But he could not bring himself to throw it away. It was clean. In his world of dust and decay, it was clean. He took it inside and placed it on his dusty table. It looked alien in the gray room. That night, Silas tried to sleep. But the wind was loud. It no longer sounded like his wife's name. It sounded like the words from the note. "Give me your light. Give me your light." "I have no light," he shouted into the darkness of his room. He could not sleep. He felt a strange agitation. He went downstairs, his bare feet cold on the stone. He looked at the empty jar on the table. He fumbled in a drawer and found the stub of a single, yellowed candle. He had not lit a candle in years. He preferred the dark. He found a match. His hand trembled as he struck it. He looked at the tiny flame. This was the only light he had in the world. A pathetic, flickering thing. He remembered the note. "Give me your light." He felt like a fool. A lonely old fool playing a game with a piece of trash. But he was so very tired of his own sadness. He took the candle. He held it over the mouth of the empty jar. He watched the wax strip. Then, with a sudden, angry breath, he blew the candle out. He dropped the warm, smoking candle into the jar and quickly, firmly, twisted the silver lid shut. There, he whispered to the jar, his voice full of spite. "You have my light. It is gone. Just like everything else. Are you happy now?" He went back to bed, feeling angrier and more empty than before. He slept, a heavy, dreamless sleep. The next morning, Silas woke up. He felt different. The oppressive cold in the lighthouse was gone. The air felt lighter, cleaner. He walked down the circular stairs, rubbing his eyes. He stopped on the bottom step. He stared at the table. The jar was glowing. It was not a bright, harsh light like a lamp. It was a soft, living light, like the light of 1,000 fireflies or the first light of the sun held in his hand. The candle was gone. The smoke was gone. There was only light, swirling gently inside the glass. Silas crept closer. He touched the jar. It was warm. He did not understand. He picked it up. The light was beautiful. He held it in his old, calloused hands and just stared. For the first time in 10 years, Silas did not feel the cold stone of the lighthouse floor. He felt warm. The warmth spread from his hands up his arms into his chest. It felt like a memory. He did not know what to do, so he just sat with it. He ate his meager breakfast of bread and water next to the jar. The golden light fell across the table, and the simple food looked like a feast. He spent the whole day with the jar. He found an old rag and polished the dust off the table, just so the jar had a clean place to sit. Then he polished the chair. Then he swept the floor around the table. "You are a strange thing," he said to the jar. A very strange thing. When night came, the little jar continued to glow. It was not much, but it was enough. It pushed the deep, heavy shadows in the room back into the corners. That night, Silas found an old book of sea stories he had not read in years. He sat by the light of the jar and read the words aloud. His own voice sounded strange, but good. A few days passed. Silas found himself taking care of the jar. He washed it every morning in seawater. He protected it when he opened the door so the wind would not chill it. He talked to it. He started cleaning the small kitchen. He scrubbed the windows, letting in more of the sun. The lighthouse was still his prison, but now it had a small, warm fire in the center. But after a week, Silas noticed something. The light was fading. The beautiful, living glow was getting weaker. It was sick. A deep, cold panic seized Silas. It was a feeling he had not felt in years. It was fear. He was afraid to lose this light. It was his light. "What is it?" he whispered to the jar. "What do you need? Are you hungry?" "I have bread." He tried to feed it. He put a crumb of bread on the lid. Nothing. He sprinkled a drop of fresh water on it. Nothing. The light grew dimmer still. He remembered the note. "Give me your light." Maybe it needed more light. Silas tore his small home apart. But he had no more candles. He had let his lamp oil run out years ago. He had no more matches. The only light he had was the dying glow in the jar. "No," he whispered, clutching the jar. "You can't go. Please, don't leave me in the dark." He looked around his gray home. He looked at the gray sea. He looked at the fading jar. Then his eyes moved. He looked up. He looked up the long, winding stairs to the lamp room. The room he had sealed shut. The room he had not entered since the day he lost Alara. It was a terrible, painful idea. His heart hammered in his chest. But the light in the jar was fading. It was almost gone. He grabbed the jar, held it close to his chest like a dying bird, and began to climb. The stairs were steep. His legs were old and weak. Each step was a memory. Each turn of the stair was a fresh wave of grief. The air grew colder, deader. It smelled of rust and salt and time. He reached the heavy wooden door to the lamp room. It was swollen shut with damp. He had to put his shoulder into it. With a groan of tortured wood, it opened. He stepped inside. It was a tomb. The giant lens, once a jewel, was opaque with grime. The giant brass gears were frozen with green corrosion. The mirrors were black. This was the heart of the lighthouse, and it was dead. "I can't," he whispered. The sadness in this room was suffocating. It was the heart of his own pain. He looked at the jar in his hand. The light was a pinprick. A single, tiny spark. In a moment, it would be gone. He looked at the giant, dirty lens. "I have no light to give," he said to the jar, tears streaming down his face. "It's all gone." He had one last, desperate, foolish idea. With trembling fingers, he twisted the silver lid. He opened the jar. He held the open jar up to the giant, cold lens of the lighthouse. He held it against the filthy glass. "Take this," he whispered. "It is all I have. Please." He waited. Nothing. And then, the last flicker in the jar went out. The light was gone. Silas closed his eyes. The absolute cold he had kept away for a week flooded back in. He was just a foolish old man in a dark room, talking to an empty jar. His hope had been a trick. He sat there for a long time, as the sun finally set and the room became a black void. Then, he heard a sound. A soft click. He opened his eyes. He saw nothing but blackness. Then, sh-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. A sound like a great, slow breath. Then, groan. A sound of old, heavy machinery, protesting as it moved for the first time in a decade. The great lamp, it was moving. It was turning slow and heavy as a mountain. And then, a spark. A tiny spark, deep inside the giant, sleeping lens. Not a spark of fire, but a spark of pure, white light. Then another. And another. A great, silent explosion of white light filled the room. It was brighter than the sun, brighter than lightning. It was overwhelming. Silas fell back, shielding his eyes. The light was not hot. It was warm. It was the same, gentle warmth of the jar, but magnified a million times. The great lens turned, and a massive, brilliant beam of pure, white light shot out from the lighthouse, cutting 30 miles into the darkness of the night sea. The light was back. Silas stared, his eyes streaming with tears from the brightness. The light was alive. He looked down at the empty jar in his hand. It was just an empty jar again. He understood. The jar had not wanted his small, sad candle flame. It had been waiting. It had been waiting for the real light. The light he was meant to share. The light he had kept locked away. But as the beam swung around, it illuminated the room. And Silas saw the filth. Silas looked at the beam. It was strong, but it was dirty. The grime on the glass and the tarnish on the mirrors choked it. It was a shout when it should have been a song. "No," Silas said. His voice was different now. It was not the voice of a sad man. It was the voice of the keeper. "Not like this. Not my light." For the rest of the night, Silas worked. He had a purpose. He was a man possessed by a new spirit. He flew up and down the ladders. He scrubbed away 10 years of salt and dust. He chipped away the green corrosion from the brass gears. His hands, soft from a decade of disuse, began to bleed, but he did not notice. He oiled the giant turning wheels. He polished the huge mirrors behind the lamp until they shone like silver. He was not sad. He was not angry. He was a keeper. He was tending the light. He was scouring away his own grief with every handful of grime he removed. As the first hint of dawn began to gray the sky, Silas stepped back. The light was perfect. It was a sharp, clear, powerful beam that shot miles out to sea. It was a warning. It was a guide. It was a promise. It said, "I am here. You are not alone." The lighthouse was alive again. And so was Silas. As the sun rose, the great light sensed the day and, with a final click, it went out. Its work was done for the night. Silas was exhausted. But he was not tired. He went downstairs. The main room of the lighthouse was still dusty. It was still old. But it did not feel dark. It was full of the promise of light. He picked up the empty jar and the small, crumpled note he had fished out of his trash bin. "Give me your light. I will keep it safe." He smiled. "You did," he said. "You kept it safe until I was ready to use it again." In the village, news spread like fire. The light is back. The keeper's tomb is lit. That very night, a small fishing boat, lost in a sudden fog with a broken compass, had been caught in the rocks. The captain, a young man named Tomas, had given up hope. And then, the light had appeared. A pure, white beam that cut the fog and showed him the way home. The fishermen were more than happy. They were grateful. The sea was safer. But they were also curious. What had happened to the sad old man? A few days later, a small boat rowed out to the lighthouse. It was the young captain, Tomas, and his sister, Lena. She carried a basket of fresh bread, cheese, and salt. They found Silas outside, on a ladder, painting the lighthouse. He was not the man they remembered. He was clean. He was strong. "Keeper?" Lena asked, shielding her eyes. You fixed the light," Tomas said, his voice full of awe. "You saved us." Silas looked down from his ladder. "No, son," he replied, his voice clear as a bell. "The light fixed me." Silas stayed in that lighthouse for 20 more years. He never let the light go out again. He became a legend. Sailors from all over the world knew of Silas's light. It was the brightest, most reliable light in the sea. It was a beacon of safety, a pillar of hope. He kept the small glass jar on his table, which was no longer dusty. It never glowed again. It didn't need to. The whole lighthouse was now his jar of light. Sometimes we lose our hope. Our grief is a storm. Our sadness is a fog. We let our own, beautiful light go out. We hide in the darkness of our own sadness, and the world becomes a little darker, a little more dangerous for everyone. We think our light is small or useless. We think it is gone forever, and we lock the door to the lamp room. But hope is never truly lost. Sometimes it is just waiting. It is a small, glowing thing waiting for us to be ready. It waits for us to find a purpose. It waits for us to remember that our light is not just for us. The most important thing to remember is that your light, your hope, your kindness, your talent, your voice, it is not just for you. It is meant to be a guide for others who are lost in the fog. Do not be afraid to climb the stairs out of your own darkness. Do not be afraid to clean the glass. Your light is stronger than you know. Share it. The world is waiting for it.